Buzzkills podcast. This is so exciting to be here in Baltimore at Netroots Nation. We're so excited to be here. Feminist Buzzkills is the show that basically just put France back on the list of escape plans. So yay, France. We feel good about that. We feel good about that. I'm Lizz Winstead, and I'm joined by my special Buzzkills co-host, Programs Director Kristin Hady. Kristin, why are you my co-host today?
Because the lovely Moji HELLOOOO has COVID. So unfortunately, boo, you get Timu Moji today. So my apologies to everybody.
Stop it. You're going to be awesome. I'm so excited you're here.
I know. I'm excited to be here buzzkilling all three big shows. And coming up on today's pod, we'll break down the alarming trend of OB-GYNs and med students fleeing states with terrifying abortion bans and really get into the why the framing of restoring Roe that Dems are trying to sell us just isn't enough.
That's right. Plus, we're going to touch on some of the biggest abobo bullshit of the week. And joining us in a hot minute to break it all down with us is Executive Director of Medical Students for Choice, the one and only Pamela Merritt is here. Woo! Yes, we are happy to be at Netroots again. Kristin, for folks who don't know you, you are our Programs Director at AAF. This is your second time at Netroots?
Second time, yes.
And what do you think?
It's hella fun to be here. We get to be around hundreds of people who actually care about things and abortion access and want to do something about it. So it's really a nice change of pace from where we're used to be.
Yeah, at clinics with horrible white guys who look, you're like, are you a Mumford and Sons? Are you a white supremacist? Who are you? I can't tell sometimes when I look at these guys outside of clinics. It's all wild.
Nobody here is going to call me a baby murderer. So it's win in my book.
Would you like me to, just to make you feel comfortable?
I actually would.
Okay, at some point I will. I'll just scream it out.
It just makes me feel at home.
I'm glad. It's been a week, so before we get to the beefy stories, we thought we'd break down some of the headlines of the week for you. So get ready. We're going to officially start with a steaming news dump of this week's abortion news. The nation laughed and pointed and poured a bucket of pig's blood on the media this week for their ridiculous claims that the GOP platform has softened its stance on abortion. Now, while the new language does fall short of demanding vaginal padlocks and uterine trackers, it does insist that birth control is an abortion and that under the 14th Amendment, a fertilized egg is a whole-ass person. Seems like the only thing softening here is the media's perception of oppression.
And they all should have seen this clapback coming because abortion is more popular than ever. A new AP poll shows support for legal abortion has skyrocketed since Dobbs. 7 in 10 Americans think abortion should be legal in all or most cases, and 8 in 10 believe it should be legal in extreme cases like saving the life of the patient. This new finding puts abortion on the popularity scale right between Taylor Swift and literally any video of a puppy hugging a duck.
I know. I love those puppy hugging duck videos. I can't get enough.
You can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong. You know, that's a good spot to be in.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I feel like it's good. And finally, now, working tirelessly to negate your own vote was not on our bingo card. This week, Politico featured the story of Aubrey McNiff, a Florida Trump supporter who is also fighting to get abortion enshrined in the Florida Constitution. When asked if she saw any irony in her activism, she answered with an emphatic no, claiming she also believes in bombing for peace and fucking for virginity. This has been your steaming news dump, and it was messy.
Messy as hell.
I know. I mean, so much news, so little time. But I think that right now is time that we're going to get into our big topics of this particular pod, because there are 3 sort of things that I feel like we should be concentrating on as abortion is front and center and more popular than Taylor Swift in this election cycle. And I feel like we're not.
And in case you all didn't know, we're actually in an election year.
What?
And abortion is on the ballot. I know, wild. And polling better than every candidate that's running for office.
Yeah, even the old ones.
Even the old ones, which are most of them.
Yeah, turns out. I say that as an old person, so don't be whatever.
She has the privilege.
I do. I get to own it. And states are imposing harsher laws while citizens are desperately working on ballot initiatives, which are great, but they're not the be-all, end-all. And I think we're leaning too hard on them, and we're going to break down why we shouldn't be totally leaning on them to end our oppression and give us bodily autonomy. Plus, we're just fumbling around with this phrase, restore Roe. Like, that is some also positive thing, and that, like, Roe didn't get us here to begin with. So we're going to break all of that down as well. Kristin, I don't want to ask you to rank these things, but I do know that, like, at Abortion Access Front, we talk constantly about this Restoring Roe framework that feels like it's coming from political consultants, not actually the people that are doing the work.
Yes. I mean, it's a catchy phrase. You can put it on bags and come up with all kinds of slogans, but Roe was never enough. So many sections of communities were not able to access abortion care during Roe, post Roe. It's gotten exponentially worse, but it was never great.
That's right. People, first of all, if you still have to pay for abortions, Roe was never enough, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
If you are finding challenges in getting care and you have to have abortions in your pregnancy, that you can't take a pill or whatever, it's never enough. The fact that there is still criminalization around pregnancy outcomes, it is never enough. So we're going to seriously break down all of that garbage. Also, ballot initiatives. You're from Ohio.
I am.
You worked your ass off on the Ohio ballot initiative, and yay. I know, great job, but also, like, you are my go-to a lot of times on, like, while it was one of those, like, yay, wins, but like, ugh.
It was a win with an asterisk. I mean, when living in...
It puts the ass in asterisk?
It puts the ass in asterisk, Ohio's new motto. Ohioans, we live in a state that is gerrymandered to hell. Our representatives, they don't actually represent our opinions. So on one side, there was this huge mass movement of people who were fed up and said, fuck this, and got together and made it happen. But it wasn't enough. Ohio even does have a viability ban in it, and we're starting to see better measures come out. And it still doesn't take care of what is going to happen federally.
That's right. And with the garbage Supreme Court, we have a lot to talk about. I feel like, too, and then lastly, there's just this surge of med students who are not going to these states, people who are fleeing states, and just a lot of garbage. And this is a good time to bring up our superstar guest to break it all down with us, a regular of this podcast, somebody who we turn to for guidance and advice, somebody who you should turn to for guidance and advice, someone who's bringing her purse on stage because she is Aretha Franklin. Please welcome to the stage the one and only executive director of Med Students for Choice, Pamela Merritt. Woo-hoo! Come on up, Pam. Pamela. Yay! Woohoo! Oh, Kristin, kick us off.
Yeah, so Pamela, can you tell us about Med Students for Choice, what you do, and really what you're scared about right now? Big question.
Oh, goodness. So first of all, thank you for this opportunity. It's always great to spend time with y'all. I love this podcast so much. So Medical Students for Choice is a 31-year-old organization founded by medical students shortly after the murder of Dr. David Gunn, who was an abortion provider and was murdered, I believe, in Florida. In
Pensacola.
Pensacola, yeah. So after he was assassinated by an anti-abortion terrorist, the organization that terrorist was affiliated with sent a mailing to thousands of medical students in which it said, if you continue to train on abortion and family planning services, you're going to end up exactly like Dr. Gunn. The response of the medical students was to come into community with each other on their various campuses and try to, figure out why they were getting their lives threatened. And then they quickly realized that many of them just received a death threat, essentially, for something that is not consistent in the United States, still isn't, never has been, which is abortion education and training. So it's not mandatory for accreditation for medical schools because all of these reasons, it's basically they're avoiding politics, they're avoiding responsibility. Old cis white men who run these institutions don't necessarily value the health of people who can experience pregnancy. So for a lot of reasons, people have not been getting consistent training and education. So what they then did is they founded MSFC, which basically provides abortion training and education, family planning training to any medical student or resident who seeks it out. We went from being mostly U.S. organization to now we have a membership of well over 10,000 student leaders in 31 countries across the globe. Our largest membership is in the US. Our fastest membership is in the global South because nothing makes the case for abortion and family planning education and training like maternal outcomes in places where it is banned. So sadly, we're already seeing that in the United States. But trust me that I get just as much, interaction and enthusiasm from Ugandan chapters as I do in the U.S. It's actually refreshing. And then as far as what I do as executive director is I basically go out and try to make a better environment for people to train on abortion care. And y'all know me, Liz knows me very well. I'm kind of on the more militant side when it comes to abortion access. I do
Which we love.
Militant meaning everyone should have it and have it for free. It's not
Thank you.
when we think of
Thank
militant,
you.
like how sad is it that our side views militants as literally freedom?
Yeah, just freedom. I mean, I want to liberate abortion and family planning from the legislative process.
And the
Yes.
criminalization, please,
Yeah.
of all of it, right?
Exactly. But basically, no matter what we do, there will need to be abortion providers because no matter what we do, pregnancy has risks. Even if you're super, super healthy and you've done everything right, it's not about that. It's about the fact that pregnancy is both amazing and really cool and also a body and life-altering experience for many people, which is why when I talk about maternal mortality connected with abortion, people are like, what does that have to do with it? Everything.
Mhm.
Everything. In a country where Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die as a result of a pregnancy complication, and for every Black woman who dies, there are thousands who survive with life-altering catastrophic harm, then access to abortion has been, is, and will always be a life and death issue for Black women and people who experience pregnancy.
And I think
Yes.
that takes us to what's happening now, the first
Mhm.
part of what we want to talk to you about, which is now with OB-GYN students
Mhm.
fleeing states. Idaho, 21% of their OB-GYNs have just left the state because it's too terrifying for them. You know, when you get 2 to 5 years of jail time, a $100,000 fine, loss of your license, and that's just Idaho. It's not only harming people who need abortion care, but people who need prenatal care. And those numbers are going to spike. So as we saw with this EMTALA case, which was so depressing to watch, we're just talking about these emergency room abortion cases where honestly, the Supreme Court just kicking this emergency room case back to the courts. And we talked to an OBGYN in Idaho right when it happened. And she's like, I don't feel any better because we're talking about literally like 6 or 8 people who we will be able to treat. And when there are a myriad of people. So Pamela, after filibustering, I'm sorry, what I want you to talk about is this larger trend. It's not just Idaho,
Mhm.
it's everywhere. So can you just let folks know like what this landscape is around med students not wanting to go to these states,
Mhm.
OBGYNs fleeing, and what that looks like in the bigger picture?
So med students are people.
What a
I know.
revelation.
It's shocking.
They're not AI?
No.
Oh.
They're not martyrs. They're everyday people who are wicked smart and incredibly dedicated because it takes many, many, many years to become an OB-GYN. So there's a couple of things that are in play here. One is that the type of person who becomes a medical student tends to be very competitive, wants to be very good at what they do. And by the time they're in their 3rd and 4th year, they're like, I've invested a lot of time, in some cases $500,000. So that, because you want to talk about tuition problems, it's also at the med school level. In order to become a doctor, I want to be the best doctor I can be. And so when I'm ranking the residency programs I want to apply for and would like to be considered for, I'm thinking about where can I learn my skills? Where can I get the best bang for my investment of time and money? But also, where might I want to live and build my practice? The majority of doctors build their practice where they had their residency. The other thing is that they are in, I hate to use this phrasing, but it's like prime reproductive years. So by the time you're graduating from medical school, the majority are at that time in their life when they're like, do I want to have children? Do I want to have them biologically or, in other ways? And what does that look like in this state? My understanding is from my members that OB-GYN residents are actually encouraged, if they're interested in having kids, to go ahead and do it when they start a residency because you're already exhausted. I think that's crazy, but okay. So basically what you have is that med students are people who don't want to live in a state where, and don't want to practice in a state where accepting preventable maternal death is the basic foundation of what they would have to do. They are people who don't necessarily want to even go into OB-GYN. I talked to somebody who wants to be a podiatrist who just does not want to live in a state where their partner might be, unable to use, fertility treatments, might be forced to carry a non-viable pregnancy to term. So they don't want to practice in an environment where their fellow physicians are being asked to take on this ever-growing moral distress. They do a lot of research. And so residency programs have been they've been missing in action. If you search to try and find residency programs in abortion ban states that has gone on the record about whether they are committed to making sure that their residents receive abortion training out of state, you can't find that in the record. You can't find that online. So their lack of public commitment means that people are going to assume it's an iffy thing. And this is important. Their accreditation is based for residency programs, is based on whether they will fulfill abortion training and education. But the devil is in the details. The accrediting body is not a federal agency. It's a private group. How are they verifying that? When will they verify that? What is the penalty for that? How do they define that? Immediately after the Dobbs ruling, we were hearing that they wanted to use artificial intelligence to simulate training and that would somehow fulfill that mandate that OB-GYN residents receive abortion training. We also heard, I know.
That sounds like a horror movie in the making.
It is. I mean,
that's the worst carnival ever.
It was horrible. it was nightmarish, and it was a sincere proposal that was considered. So basically, if you can't confirm that you're going to receive a modern competitive training, then you're not going to want to match there. And it's also important in the United States, the only way a lot of our hospitals are able to function is residents. It is low wage, abusive work and labor in exchange for training that positions you to be a great physician. It's a very old school kind of serfdom that we need to re-examine big time. But it is not the only thing you can do when you're an MD. So there's a lot of people who are like, I'm just going to sit this out. I don't want to lock in multiple years of my life in a state that has shown an overwhelming willingness to legislate medicine. So when I talk about the attack that is happening in the response of medical students, it really is an attack on the profession of medicine.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I wanted to say is like, I can't imagine spending so much time and treasure wanting to heal people and develop relationships with patients, and to have the percentage of me having to deny my patients care and watch and be criminalized if I recommended the best care for them. Like, that's the road that seems just unimaginable. And I get it. And you live in Missouri.
I live in Illinois.
Oh, you live in Illinois?
Right across the bridge from Missouri.
I always think of you as St. Louis.
I was raised in Missouri.
Okay.
And I lived in Missouri for the longest time. And then in 2020, I decided I needed a change of scenery.
Okay.
So 20 minutes away from the city of St. Louis, but it's like leaving 1956 and moving over to 2024.
Welcome. That's very exciting for you. But I know you're involved in what's going on in
Absolutely.
Missouri for sure.
And MSFC has several chapters in
Yeah.
Missouri.
And so for those of you that don't know, Missouri it has garbage politicians, total abortion ban, and they have a ballot initiative that is been controversial and wild. And Kristin talked a little bit about Ohio, and I would love for you to talk about why you believe ballot initiatives are just sort of this like Band-Aid, and then Missouri specifically and the shenanigans that are happening there.
Sure. Ballot initiatives are a tactic. And I'm at my core, the proudest thing I could be called is an organizer.
Yes.
I'm an organizer. I love strategy. You have to have a strategy to win. And so we didn't get here overnight. One tactic is not going to fix things. And a tactic that is not bound by a strategy is a freaking recipe for disaster. We have been jumping from tactic to tactic to tactic in our reproductive health rights and justice movement work. And that's why we keep losing while winning. So you can win your tactic, but because you don't have a strategy to actually restore abortion access to every single person who needs it, you're not going to do that. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I want to spend the rest of my life doing. So in Missouri, it's a perfect example. You have a really, really desperate situation. You have abortion access across the border in Kansas. And then on the other side of the state, my side, you have abortion access that has been protected across the border, across the river in Illinois. But rather than pause and build a strategy, what has happened in Missouri is that a lot of investment went into a ballot amendment. And because they require a lot of money, the big money had a say in kind of what the wording was going to be. And the wording does matter. Roe v. Wade had this really pesky wording around viability, and that is not a medically accurate term. I know it feels like it should be, but just like every pregnancy is unique, viability is unique to every fetus.
Pamela, somebody said to me once, and I thought it was so great, a physician, they said, viability is like puberty. Puberty happens at different stages for every person, and it shows up differently. And viability is the same way. And that really
that's great.
with me.
Yep. And also the fact that legislators don't care about science. They don't legislate based on what is
You're
science.
dropping all kinds of knowledge today.
Facts. They don't care if it's medically accurate. They're not basing it in science. If you look at proposed bills out of the Missouri state legislature for the last 10 years, none of them are based in reality. Well, most of them aren't based in reality. So basically what they did is they led with compromise in Missouri. They put viability in there. Now, when voters in Ohio went to the polls, they went to the polls to vote for abortion. My medical student members don't know how to define viability because it was made up by some law clerk who was trying to sell through Roe to a bunch of men at the time who really just were like, well, we can't let people who experience pregnancy in women make a decision without giving them some sort of parameters. We can't let them make decisions without limits. So they put a limit in there. But we don't have to do that. We don't have to organize now the way we had to organize before June 24th of 2022. Those viability limits have been the limit to good policy for 49 years. Roe wasn't just insufficient. It was like it can be both a feminist victory and flawed.
Yes.
So when ballot amendments lead with compromise, that's when I get loud and I challenge, because there's no polling that shows you have to have a viability limit in there. Anybody who says there is, they ask them to show it, because they won't. There's no polling. Nobody goes to the ballot and votes for viability limits. Nobody's like, I'd vote for this if I could just see 2-parent notification on it. Nobody does this. People go to the polls and vote for abortion. Abortion is polling really well, not abortion with caveats. So
Yes.
when you're building out, you have an opportunity, a rare opportunity to actually center the people most impacted by reproductive oppression. You need to seize that opportunity. And if that's the difference between somebody who's willing to give you $65 million or not, then you need to ask them why they're willing to compromise abortion access.
And I would even say, ask anybody who says a 15-week limit seems fine. Say to them, at what point, if somebody were to propose to you personally, at what week in your pregnancy would you say, I feel perfectly comfortable having the government take over for me at that point? If the answer is never, then the answer is never for everyone.
And that's what polling is flawed in itself, because it's all dependent on the questions that you are asking. So if you are asking people, at what point do you think the government should interfere at this point? But if you simply ask, do you believe the government should interfere in your health care? Everybody is going to say absolutely fucking not.
Well, and I just want to point out too, I just want to point out too that is a tactic of right-wing media. If you will watch how right-wing media, it's why I refuse to ever go on any of those shows on Fox ever, because why would I put myself into that Fox's Den or the Hen House or whatever that is? Because Sean and Hannity will go, all right, when do you believe it's okay to murder a baby? At this time or this time? It's like, well, I don't believe ever. No, answer my question. I've given you 2 parameters, and it's like, your parameters are fucking garbage, just like you.
Yeah.
And so that's, and so I just feel like those are the kind of things that you're right. It's like, why are we beholden to a question someone asks us about ourselves? And that is right. And why don't we have people who care about abortion? I wish we don't have $65 million to run that gamut and put that shit up.
Right. They're running ballot initiatives in states that they want to win a 2024 election in. And so nobody invests $65 million because of women's health. Nobody. I wish they did. They don't.
What a world that would be.
What a world that would be. So they're running it for a reason. We need to ask what that reason is. But the bigger picture that I'm focused on is the lack of strategy. That, I'm no longer comfortable waiting for somebody to deliver a strategy. I've spent 2 years demanding it and calling out the lack of strategy. So when people say they want to win, what? How do you define victory? What do you consider a win? Because 24-week limits aren't a win to me. And when somebody says that, that we're all in it together, before the fall of Roe, I might have said, yeah, I guess, we want the same things. Now I'm like, well, the devil's in the details. What do you want? Because what I want is very clear. Abortion access, liberated from the legislative process, no limits now.
Yes. So speaking on Roe, one of the things we are talking about is the Restoring Roe framework that Democrats are really pushing. So when you hear that slogan, what do you feel, and how do we educate politicians that it's simply not enough?
I feel rage and frustration, deep disappointment in the organizations that have proximity to power, that they have not used that power to educate politicians. But, I'm not a big person on polling, because if you polled my liberation as a Black woman, it would not poll well. So I don't rely on polling. What something's right or something's wrong, it's not dependent on whether or not y'all or the American public are comfortable with it. But at the same point, polling on abortion is more popular than anything currently out there. And I wish we had done this kind of polling before. You don't ask for things when you've got these numbers. You make demands.
Yes.
You don't sit up there and negotiate what a politician is comfortable with. You tell a politician what you want in order to endorse them. And if you don't endorse them, since there's absolutely not a single other issue Democrats are actually performing well on, then you flex. That's when you flex. The only way people are going to win elections is the wave of people who are coming out upset about abortion. That's it. So as an organizer, you work years to get here. And then when you've got it, when you pull out the Midwest Academy organization chart and you're just like, I've got the power, flex it, damn it. Tell
True.
these people
Yeah.
what the actual hell the people need. And I'm not seeing that from other groups. So I'm not all that interested in meeting with politicians and convincing them. I think what we need to do is meet with politicians and remind them that an endorsement is not a given, that our vote is not a given. I know that's scary, but it needs to be said. It needs to be said now and forever. Earn it.
Earn it. And also earn it by actually talking to people who've had abortions, people who provide abortions, because the truth is these ballot initiatives are what desperate people did. People who had every right to keep their abortions to themselves had to self-evaluate and say, I don't have any other choice but to try to come forward and do something in my state. And the numbers of people that have signed the petitions to get the ballot initiatives, it's not politicians can't act like, well, we're just not sure. There's floods of people who are telling you with their signatures, by door knocking, and by showing up. And Democrats have been handed this issue. And by the way, they're terrible at it because they shamed us for 40 years and 50, whatever row was 50? Row 50?
49.
49, right. You know, they shamed us saying we were overreacting, that none of this was going to happen, that it's a single issue, whatever, acting as though our humanity was not a single issue with which we should actually care about to begin with. So I'm with you. It's terrible. Pamela, final thoughts on like what could be and what people in this room, as they hear us talking, like, what would you like them to be thinking about? And what kind of language would you like them to be using to move forward with people in their lives and also with folks who they may come into contact with who they'll be casting votes for in the fall?
Great question. So if you're here, you're probably a progressive. And
we hope.
And so progressive has to mean something. Progressive has to mean that I'm an intersectional feminist. I'm a reproductive justice activist. So my liberation is tied into the liberation of other people. Your issue doesn't, inoculate you from having to be concerned about abortion and family planning. Weave it into your discussion of environmental justice. Weave it into your discussion of economic justice. Because if we don't get this right, there's not a single progressive platform issue that's going to happen the way it should. Not one. Not one. Because the majority of the population in chaos, subject to harm or death. You see how it works? So I want people to start talking about abortion as the issue it is. It touches on every single progressive policy concern. Talk about it without shame. 1 out of 3 people pursuing something is not unpopular. It's not controversial. It's not complicated. It is hard to get right now, but you need to talk about it in a full-voiced way. And the final thing I'll say is that the most impactful conversations you're ever going to have politically are with your close, intimate friends and family. And I need specifically white women. I need cis white women to talk to cis white women about what they did in 2016 and how they are going to fix it or make amends going forward. I need you to have those conversations.
Yeah. And I want to just button that by saying, I can't say to myself, well, wasn't the person that did that. You're related to those people. You're doing that. Nobody wants to hear you whine about going home and to Thanksgiving. And what am I going to do with racist Uncle blah, blah? It's like, why don't you put it out there about racist Uncle blah, blah, about how you feel? Because every time you don't, you're doing a disservice. If you have invited people into your life, Black folks, people of color, queer folks, and you can't defend them at a table from Uncle fucking douchebag, don't go to the streets and act like you care about what's happening in the streets. Because nobody needs you in the streets if you can't do that with your family. Bottom line, that's it. I'm with you 100%. Pamela, can you stick around with us?
Sure.
Okay, great.
We have links to more info about what we've talked about will be in the show notes so you can do your own research, but like with facts. And we always like to remind you that you can find the best, most up-to-date resources on accessing abortion care and funding for your care on our website, aafront.org.
That's right. We have this Charlie chatbot. It's amazing. If you look in the lower right corner at our website, it will walk anyone, anywhere in the country through all of your options and resources to access abortion. So it's really amazing. So
Pamela, thank you for your work and
yes,
all of your wisdom. You can find Med Students for Choice on social at MSF Choice and check out their work at msfc.org. And you're down to stick around
Yep.
for a little game and some Q&A.
Sure.
it's the party game that's faster than Monopoly and more fun than Taboo. It's 6 degrees of abortion. Normally, this is where Moji, aka Kristin, picks a story from the news, seemingly not about abortion, and then I have 6 degrees to try to tie it to abortion. So,
But here at Netroots, we are going to have y'all toss us some stories, and Lizz, Pamela, and I will try and make the connection together. So, your challenge is, let's see if y'all can stump us this week.
all right, who's
What
got a story?
stories?
Who's got a story that's seemingly not about abortion at all? All right, come on up to the mic and tell the story. All right, here we go.
Mhm.
Boop, bada, boop, bada, boo. Boop, bada, boop,
We're
bada, boo.
ready.
The extreme heat is out there currently getting so hot that it's buckling railroad tracks.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, wait. So are we tying railroad tracks to abortion? Steaming heat to abortion?
Railroad
We have
track.
to tie railroad tracks to abortion
Heat.
and heat. Okay.
Well, you really are trying to stump us.
that's a
You're up
that's
on that
great.
one.
All
I
right.
would
So
say like transportation is a big issue when it comes to abortion access. Now that abortion has been banned in so many states, there's a lot of people who have to travel out of state. And, train tickets are a lot cheaper than flying people. So the fact that, I love the train, I've taken it many times, and the buckling that happens from the heat is harder to address than, keeping it warm when it's freezing, like they light fires on the track. So I think that's a threat
Wow.
to abortion access.
and I'm going to take it one step further. So Apiary is a practical support fund that helps people get transportation and lodging
Mhm.
to there. So Apiary will buy you a train ticket
Mhm.
out of a state that doesn't have an abortion to get you to a state that does have an abortion. So let's say that Apiary buys you a train ticket and that train ticket takes you to have an abortion. I've
Mhm.
just tied Apiary to the train to get an abortion. Did I win? Did we win? Okay. Thank you, Pamela, for making it possible. Before you go and we get to questions, Kristin?
Now it's time to thank the people who make this pod possible. The Feminist Buzzkills podcast would not be here today without the generosity of our fake sponsors. Lizz, let's tell our friends who's supporting this episode.
Absolutely. Happy to, Kristin. As we mentioned earlier in the show, 1 in 4 people will have an abortion in their lifetime. And that means someone you know is considering having an abortion right now.
And that means you need the perfect gift to insert your opinion discouraging them from making this horrible decision.
And this episode's sponsor is Fruit of the Womb Edible Arrangements. That's right. Fruit of the Womb is a handcrafted specifically for the abortion seeker in your life. It's a beautiful papaya half stuffed with an apple carved into a fetus. Designed to say, it's your choice. Be fruitful and multiply, or be a murdering whore.
You can send a Fruit of the Womb edible arrangement today at fruitofthewomb.com. If you order now using the promo code BLUEBERRY, we'll throw in an embryo-shaped balloon that says, "Mommy, don't," when you press its umbilical cord.
Fruit of the Womb Edible Arrangements. We remove the seeds so they won't have to.
No.
We have terrible sponsors.
Yeah, I'm worried about it.
Yeah, people are
It
not
does not
funding
seem
abortion podcasts the way they should, and I'm slightly concerned.
Where are you, good sponsors?
I don't know. Okay, now we have time for some questions. Hopefully you have some questions about what you heard in this podcast today or anything that you want to know in general about the state of abortion access. Right here, you'll say it and then I'll repeat it.
So the question was, that as a progressive Black woman in taking in all of the things that we discussed today, it makes voting harder and that this individual doesn't know kind of what to do. So here's the gospel according to Pamela. The gospel according to Pamela is that I don't fall in love with politicians, Politicians are an instrument. Voting is a tactic, and it is a strategy. This year sucks. It does. But the work that you do and I do will be much harder if we don't show up and vote. My strategy is that somebody gonna be called in or out, the day after the election, because this is a hot mess that should never be repeated. That said, I vote because people died for me to vote, and they didn't die out of some weird cause. They died because it matters that much, because it is a tactic that is part of a strategy that, if we did it right, would get us where we need to go. So in order for us to get to the point where these people can be put in a position to trust Black women, we need to win in November.
Moji, my regular co-host, how many of you know Moji? She's incredible.
She's amazing.
And I love to quote Moji, because on that very question, what Moji says is, I'm voting for who I want to fight, not for the person who is not going to allow me to fight anymore. And I think that is crucial.
Yep.
Yeah. Somebody else. Question. The question is, he's from Canada. They don't have this. If we could go back and sort of warn people pre-Roe about what we could do, what will we have done? I guess I'll start with that by saying we spent 9 years doing that and no one listened. That's just me being pissed. But what I would say to people is, please understand and learn about state politics, because state politics is how we got Roe. State politics is how we lost Roe. And paying attention to who is on your school board and your city council and your state legislators and your governors, those are the people that are giving us these insidious laws. And, I don't live in Mississippi, but people in the United States don't have abortion access because of Mississippi. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is the creepiest fucking place on earth, next to, like, I don't know, Disneyland. Quite frankly, it feels like super creepy. So it's like, all of that shit matters, right? Like, who is installed and what happens. So it's really paying attention to how this shit got here, because I don't think people knew. I mean, Democrats did not start voting in midterms in any real way until 2006. We just gave it up. Also check in with yourself about how you actually feel about abortion, because I think 90% of the abortion sorry, I'm filibustering. 90% of the abortion conversation is based on so much information that the anti-abortion movement puts out that we just absorb it into our skin and parrot it out.
Yep. And don't be lulled into complacency. If you don't have a national law that protects it, fucking get one. I mean, this is what happened. It was so many people believed that it wouldn't be overturned, that we would have it forever. But that just wasn't the case. So if you don't have it guaranteed, that needs to happen before it's a crisis.
Absolutely. So not just because Canada is on my flee to list, because I love hockey. I mean,
here. I'll go with you.
I love Tim Hortons. I want to be a curler. It's all good.
Pro-abortion Canadian.
Pro-abortion Canadian.
We're in.
But I don't think I realized how Canada governs abortion until we lost Roe. And I had to find a place for medical students to train. So I was like, Canada. And no, it wasn't that easy, because Canada doesn't have a lot of clinics. So Canadians come down to the U.S. to train. That can change. That should change. So I agree 100% that France went in and enshrined abortion and the right to make decisions about your body in their constitution. They did it with limits. You could one-up France, and this could be part of what I believe is a Canadian tradition of being better, or trying to be better than the U.S., or different. So, being proactive about a policy issue would be the opposite of the U.S. You have to enshrine it federally. Every single thing that you're doing in a province that you like needs to be protected federally. And I'm not up on Canadian politics and how that happens, but that needs to be the number one priority. And since the dumpster fire of horrible harm that is happening here is being flooded in the news up there, now's the time to strike.
Great question. Love the spirit of competition. You've already one-upped America. New goal, one-up France.
Yeah.
That's right.
There you
And
go.
we have time
One more
for
question.
one last question.
Oh, shit.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh, it's Anthony Comstock back from the dead.
I have a question. Thank you so much
Oh.
for inviting me up
I'm
here.
not the only one
God.
invited.
Okay, great, perfect. My question is thus.
Oh.
Are you the wanton harlots who have been relentlessly peddling that vile petition to repeal my virtuous 1873 Comstock Act?
Yes, we are.
Are you a dead white man?
Who isn't? Who isn't, Pamela?
It's freaking Comstock.
Yeah, it is I.
Okay, we need. Okay, so we answered your question. So you had your question. That was it. You don't have a second question. Your question was: are we the wanton harlots who have the repeal Comstock?
Hell
we are.
yes.
Time for you to go.
Oh,
Okay.
well, let me clarify for
Okay,
those
God.
here. My Comstock Act is a moral cure-all for all of America's moral ailments. In my day, I was put in charge of making sure no obscene filth got through
Okay,
to corrupt
wow.
society.
We don't have a cut your mic thing like they do in the debates.
Oh, no.
But here's the deal.
Turn it up,
Okay, audience, here's
maestro.
the deal. We know that Comstock is freaked out by our very existence, so I think a way to get rid of him, sort of like, the Good Witch of the North, is if you'll just expose a little skin.
Just a
If
little
you're-
bit.
Just
Can't
a
get rid
little
of me.
wrist. Just a little wrist. If you'll just all
Don't get
give
rid of
him
me.
some little
I'm a
wrist,
master
little
debater. Why don't you
ankle,
engage
and we'll
with me?
chase him out of the room.
Oh, no.
Look, wrist.
No. Oh, my God. No. Oh, my
Boobs,
Oh,
boobs,
no. Oh, my
wait.
God. Oh, shut it down.
Go.
Get thee gone.
Arms.
Get thee gone.
Goodbye, Comstock. Goodbye, Comstock.
Later, Comstock.
See ya fucking later, Comstock. That is our show.
Thank you so much to Pamela Merritt for joining us. You can find Met Students for Choice on social at MSF Choice and check out their work at msfc.org. Thank you so much for listening. Please support the pod, like, subscribe, and show us love with a 5-star rating. And don't forget, you can stay up to date on all of the latest repro news between episodes at Abortion Front. Let's make a difference and have some fun while doing it.
Looking where you might fit in to do some abortion activism? We've got a 5-part training series, Operation Save Abortion, at operationsaveabortion.com. And visit our super cool activist calendar while you're there that's full of local and national actions and educational opportunities. For those who want to get involved, on July 17th, from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern, Faith Choice Ohio is holding a virtual self-managed abortion training. Folks can learn how to share information about why self-managed abortion through medication is safe, effective, and convenient reproductive health options for those in your community. Sign up at the link in our activist calendar.
Abortion Access Front is coming to Chicago for a week of activism at the DNC and kicking it off Monday, August 19th, with a show at the Metro called L'Abortion Variety Hour, a cavalcade of cooch, a throwback variety show packed with music, comedy, and burlesque. All the things that could be banned after the election. So if you're going to be in Chicago, you are going to want to check it out. Tickets at aafront.org/variety show.
Next week, we're dark, but we have some amazing guests on the pod, so if you miss us a lot, you can just check out some old episodes wherever you pod.
And join our Patreon. You'll support great content and get cool FBK merch and experiences. All pledges support this pod and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. Pledge at patreon.com/Feminist Buzzkills. FBK is edited by Remy DeTournay and is produced by Abortion Access Front.
And finally, we leave you with Oklahoma Senator Dusty Devers, an actual elected official, and that's his actual name, showing us his whole ass when he tells us how he would punish abortion havers and providers. Kristin thinks he's hot. I'm just saying that to end the podcast.
You dick.
To take any life before they're born or after is a homicide. So before they're born, it would be prenatal homicide. So instead of treating abortion as though it's health care to be regulated, God demands we treat abortion as murder to be criminalized. To abolish abortion is to actually criminalize the act of prenatal homicide and hold all parties culpable for that murder.
Feminist Buzzkills, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. New episodes drop Friday. When BS is poppin', we pop off. And if you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.
Hi, gays.
and people who love the gays.
I'm Dr. Carlton.
And I'm D'Angelo.
I'm a Mayo Clinic trained board certified gastroenterologist. But honestly, you may already know me as the butt stuff doc.
And I'm a gay guy.
Honestly, same.
Each week on our new advice podcast, But Honestly,
Starting this summer, we'll be here for your questions about
sex,
socializing,
love,
and butt stuff. But honestly, dropping on Wednesdays.
hump day,
Starting this summer, make sure to subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts.
and look for our Patreon for a deeper dive into the butt.
Honestly.